Okay, thank you. So, welcome. I am Sheila Lynn. This is my husband, Denny Lynn. And this is his brother, Matt Lynn. We work together as a team, and our presentation is entitled The Gifts of Near-Death Experiences. You may also see our son John at some point. He's not in the room yet, but he promised he was going to come. So I want to begin by telling you what we are doing here, since none of us have had a near-death experience, at least not one that we remember. Here's what happened. A few years ago, our friend Fran was visiting us, and she is one of the most courageous people we know. She speaks up publicly about things that other people get killed for saying in public. She is a real truth teller. And we asked her, where do you get your courage? Fran said, from reading about near-death experiences. I've read about them every day for 10 years, and I am not afraid to die. And she showed us the book that she was reading at the time, which was this one. This is Lessons from the Light by Kenneth Ring. Applause for Kenneth Ring. Yeah. Thank you. As we came to know, he is one of the great pioneers in the field of near-death studies. And we've always been interested in these experiences. And we'd read about them, including some of Ken's other books. But we had not read this one, Lessons from the Light. So we got it, and we read it, and we really loved it. And we especially loved Ken's thesis, which is that the near-death experience is like a benign virus, meaning we can catch it like a virus, and it's benign, it's good for us. What he means is that all of us can experience some of the effects of a near-death experience without having to die, simply by immersing ourselves in accounts of other people's near-death experiences, by talking to them, reading about their experiences, or coming to conferences like this one. Also, as Matt will say in a moment, we notice that the typical stages of a near-death experience parallel the healing processes that we have included in our books and retreats all over the world for years, because we find that they are so universally healing. Ken Ring calls the near-death experience the universal donor, because it transcends all religions and cultures. And again, that really spoke to us, because as we've grown, we try to speak and write in a way, our field is spirituality, but we try to speak and write in a way that transcends any specific religious point of view, a way that is truly universal. And so when we heard that phrase, the universal donor, we again felt a resonance between our work and near-death experiences in terms of that universal quality. And so all of that inspired us to write the next book that we were considering at that time, to write it about how the healing processes that we use can help people catch the benign virus of the near-death experience. Now, because we were following Ken Ring's thesis there about the benign virus, we wanted to tell him what we had in mind and make sure it was all right with him. And we were able to track down his contact information, and we wrote him. And he wrote back, and one thing led to another. And if any of you know Ken, he is a total sweetheart. So by about the third back and forth, he's signing it, Love, Ken. We've never met this guy. But eventually we did. He became a really beloved friend and the mentor for the book that we ultimately did write, And that gave us courage to write in a field where we really are not experts. You have experts here. We are not, and we're not even experiencers. But we tried to write for people who really wanted to catch that virus as much as we did. And then Ken ended up writing the foreword, which is hysterical. If you read nothing else, and you happen to have that book, read the foreword. So what I want to say is that we are glad we're here, and we're glad you're here too. As I said earlier, we saw many parallels between the healing processes that we use in our books and conferences and the typical stages of a near-death experience. And Matt's going to say more about that. Thank you.
Sheila mentioned we give retreats, conferences, and write books. And one of the first books we wrote was trying to heal grief that's everywhere, especially when you lose a loved one that's really close to you. And we found that the way to heal that grief was to find how you're still connected to that love. It doesn't just end with death. It still continues. And then later we found that's what happens in a near-death experience. One of the first things you do is you meet people on the other side and how they've always been there for you, loving you. And then we switch to physical healings. How do we begin to have our body healed? And we learn that on the other side, people are sent back, either with a process of healing and getting their life back, and sometimes it's even instant. They come back with whatever it was that was wrong with them, and it is healed. And then we went on to, well, what do you do with this life? You're sent back for a purpose. So we wrote a book called Healing the Purpose of Your Life, finding what's your unique way that you were sent to give and receive love and life. And when we got into NDEs, that's what happens. You meet this great light of love, and you have a sense of either how you can do that when you're sent back, or you're always searching for it. What's this way that I can give and receive this love and life that I met on the other side, and I've been sent back to do more of? And one of the things you do is you're sent back often to forgive people. We'd written 2 books on how do you forgive. And even one of the processes is the same one that's on the other side. We talked about how if you've really been hurt by another person, stand in their shoes. Feel what their world is like. How have they been hurt? What's that little place inside them that still has life and wants to give that life? And that's what happens in the review of life. You're in your own shoes, and you're in the shoes of the other person, every person you've been interacting with. We kept finding that whatever process we had used to help people get on their feet, those were the same ones that were in the near-death experience. By this time, we'd given retreats in over 60 countries. And we knew that these processes, they work everywhere. And what the near-death studies taught us, it's not just universal spatially in 60 countries, temporally. It's what heals us here and what heals us hereafter. So that's why we decided to write the book, as Sheila said, so that we can catch this, Ken Ring says, that near-death virus, or the benign virus, from the near-death experience without having to die. Dennis.
We're going to speak about one of our books and how it parallels the near-death experience. The first presentation here, the first part of it, is going to deal with the daily life review. In spirituality, it's called the examen. It's a fancy word. Now, in the near-death experience, when people report about the life review, and about 25% of people do, it often includes your whole life. Today, we're going to talk about how to do it with just one day. And what we're going to do is give a process to get in touch with one day, how we have loved and cared for ourselves, for others, for all of life, in order that we can grow in those capacities to love without having to die first. That's the basic, what we're going to do today. Now, the daily life review is really simple. We find that it comes down to 2 questions, and these are the questions we're going to talk about today. For what moment today are you most grateful for? And for what moment today are you least grateful for? We've been doing that together ever since we've been married. And often in the evenings, we will simply light this oil lamp. We'll ask ourselves those 2 questions. We take 5 minutes of quiet. And then we share with each other as much as we want about what we have come up with, what we were most grateful for. So with those 2 questions, a lot of people will do this daily life review by themselves. But most of our lives, we've done it together. When Matt is with us, we include him. We've done it with our son, John, since he's been 2 years old. And presently, he's on a gap year between senior year of high school and going to Regis College. And he's been home most of that time. And we still look forward every night to doing that process with him. So what we're going to speak about during the rest of this talk are those 2 questions and how they fit into the wider landscape of spirituality and getting us in touch with something that near-death experienced people also report. Thank you.
Thank you. So as Matt and Danny have said, in this presentation, we're going to focus on one element of the near-death experience and how it parallels a process that we've used for a long time. The element is the life review, and it parallels what we call a daily life review. The technical term for it from spirituality is the examen. And as we'll say toward the end, not only can this help us reflect on each day, but it can also give us clues to the purpose of our life. About 1/4 of near-death experiencers have a life review. And but it's something that we think of right away, you know, when you think of their near-death experience. And what's it going to be like when I have to look at my whole life? What I've come to, since I've become more and more aware of near-death experiences, I think about that all the time in making decisions. So, for example, I remember not too long ago, I was worrying about how to handle a situation involving a friend who was really having a hard time, and he seemed to be acting it out in his relationships with other people. And it really seemed serious to me, and I wasn't sure whether I should just wait and let him ask for help or whether I should call his family and alert them to the situation. And in trying to make this decision, I said to Denny, I'm trying to imagine myself reliving this situation during my life review after I die. And I wonder which way of responding to him will seem to me the most loving choice then. And thinking about it in that way really helped me decide what to do. And since the three of us have begun, I hope, to catch the benign virus of the near-death experience, we often find ourselves asking that kind of question, to look at something from the point of view of that final life review, to help us sort out now what is the most loving thing to do in any given situation. We know from our studies of near-death experiences that nothing will be lost. And we'd rather get it right now while we're still here than have to face our failures of love later. So it was through that, thinking in that way, that we came to see the daily life review as daily practice for that final life review after we die. Denny mentioned the two questions that are part of that process. For what today am I most grateful? For what today am I least grateful? The first one focuses on the positive, which in our experience comes down to moments when we lived as the love that we are. That is our essence. When did we live from that essence of who we are? And as an aside, the moment that we are least grateful for will generally come down to when we didn't do that, when we were disconnected from that essence of love. And having reflected in this way on our daily experience for many years, what we notice is very simple. Usually the moment we're most grateful for is when we were kind to another person. One example would be, this was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, when we did the daily life review or examen together. John's favorite moment from the day was when he ran home from school, grabbed Denny, and said, "Papa, can you give my friends a ride? They missed the bus and they have to walk to town, and they're carrying a big bass guitar." So Denny and John jumped in the car. They found John's classmates only a little ways closer to town than when they started, because they're carrying this huge guitar, and they gave the boys a ride to town. And one of the boys was not very popular, and John had mentioned how left out that boy must feel. Well, when we did the daily life review at the end of the day, John said that was his favorite moment, and he was so happy that he had helped his friends, and especially that he had done something kind for a boy who really needed to know that people cared about him. And he felt so good about it that he wanted to find other ways to reach out to that same boy. Denny was most grateful that he had helped John help his friends, and I was most grateful that I had such a nice husband and such a nice son. Now, this may seem like a pretty small thing, giving some kids a ride. And we were so happy about this. But one thing we learn from the life review in a near-death experience is that nothing is ever lost. And experiencers will report their surprise at how something so tiny could turn out to be the moment of greatest love in their life, the moment that shone through their life review, because it was so simple, so spontaneous, and so full of authentic love. This was one of those kind of moments. So for us, the importance of near-death experiences is not so much what they teach us about the afterlife, but what they teach us about how to live now. And the importance of every moment, the tiniest acts of kindness in every moment. As I said, so often our moment of most gratitude was when we were kind to someone else. And I think what those moments do is remind us of who we are and of what we most deeply want. I believe what all of us most deeply want is to contribute to the well-being of others. and to all of life. And doing this on a regular basis reinforces that. Because what we discover is that being loving or being, quotes, good makes us happy. That's what makes us happy. It feels so good that we want to do more of it. Many of us were raised with injunctions, be good, be nice, be kind. None of that is necessary. It really isn't. We don't have to force ourselves to be kind. It is our nature. And if we simply notice on a regular basis how happy it makes us to express the love that we are, we want to do it more often. It's like John, who started looking for more ways to reach out to that classmate who needed to know that people cared about him because he saw how happy it made him to give that kid a ride to town. The other thing we can do is reflect, besides reflecting on moments when we were kind to others, we can reflect every day on when others have been kind to us and how that affects us, what that does for us. And again, it can be the very simplest things that matter the most. One memory I still have, this was from 6th grade. And I think it stands out because it's one of those little tiny ones, but it was done with such purity of heart. When I was in 6th grade, we moved from Massachusetts, where I was born and grew up, to Florida. We moved just for that 1 year. No offense. Is anybody here from Florida? Okay, no offense to you, but I hated it. I hated it. It was hot. It was humid. We lived in this neighborhood that had these rows of stucco, pastel, cookie-cutter houses. And I was born into this lovely old neighborhood outside of Boston, and I hated it. And I hated my new school because I didn't have any friends. And on Valentine's Day, the other children exchanged Valentine's cards. But I was nobody's Valentine, and everybody knew it. And somehow I managed to get out of the classroom without being noticed. And I went to the playground, and I sat alone on a swing. And without my realizing it, a boy from my grade had apparently followed me out of the classroom. And he sat down on the swing next to mine. His name was Richard, and I still remember that he wore glasses. And he began to swing alongside me. And I don't even remember if he said anything. What I remember is that I was not alone anymore. It was one of the kindest things anyone has ever done in my life. And many people have been very kind to me. I've never forgotten Richard or the simple goodness of what he did. And I've thought, well, when I die, I'm going to look for him, and I'm going to thank him. But, from what we're told of that final life review, we feel the feelings of every person we interacted with during our life here, and we understand how we affected others. So if Richard has had that life review, if he has had an NDE, or if possibly he's died, he already knows how much he did for me. And maybe he's looking for me to thank me for the happiness I imagine he feels about what he did that day. Now that memory has a powerful energy for me. I can feel it now. And as I feel it, I understand the power of simple kindness, and I try to match that energy every day as I relate to other people. And when I do the life review at the end of every day, I watch for moments that have that energy, and I try to repeat them. maybe those moments of simple kindness are like a near, near, near death experience, a glimpse into a world where there is only love and kindness. And this practice that we are introducing to you is a daily way of opening the door, of glimpsing into that world and remembering that's who we are, that's where we came from, that's where we will return. Thank you.
We've been speaking about how to do this daily life review in a way that also is from that review we're going to have when we get to the other side. And I didn't realize how much difference it makes if I do it that way. Let me give you an example from my life. With Dennis and Sheila, to go write books. And this last winter, right after we'd written the book, was with them, and their son, John, is the goalie for the lacrosse team. And he was going to go off to play a game. And do I go with him or not? And here's why it was a big decision. It was winter time, and they play outside. And when I looked at the weather report, it was 28 degrees, snow predicted, 20-mile-an-hour wind. Well, that was not exactly what I was looking forward to. In fact, it was a no-brainer decision. I thought, you know, this one I can pass on. Besides that, they have to go 2 hours each way just to get to the game. So it's the whole day it takes for this thing. I'll stay home in my warm, cozy room and work on other things, answer my email, do all this other stuff I have to do. End of decision. But then I thought, hey, we just wrote a book on this near-death stuff. You know, maybe I ought to do what we talked about. Why don't I get into John's shoes? So what's it like in his world? And I could feel in his world how important how he needed support. You know, a goalie gets blamed for everything. Anytime anybody scores on you. And if nobody's blaming you, you just start blaming yourself. You know, I should have done this or should have done that. I thought, you know, just feeling his world, how important it would be if I were there to support him. And more than that, when we get back, you know, to talk about the different goals. How many he blocked and how the ones that went through, you know, they were impossible shots to block anyway. So once I got into that, I had the reverse decision. I knew I had to go with him. So this has helped me to really find the depth of what I'm grateful for and not just to go with the superficial thing that comes first. So how do we do that with our day? Maybe just do it right now with each other. What today are you grateful for? You know, maybe it's the speaker that you heard and something that moved you. Or maybe it's a person that you met. And what are you not so grateful for? Maybe you got stretched into something, or maybe you're tired. But close your eyes, and we'll just do this simple thing, looking at our day with those two questions. What am I grateful for? What am I not so grateful for? So close your eyes, put your hand over your heart, and breathe in and out through your heart that love that's infinite that you experience, that's here now, and that you'll especially experience on the other side as you meet the light and feel this love. It's infinite, unconditional. And as you breathe that in and out, what are you grateful for? What's your experience where you received this life and this love and it grew inside you today? Take a moment and see. And then do the second question. What am I not so grateful for? And see whatever experience comes today. And if that experience or a similar experience comes again, what can I change? So it can be a place where I can give and receive more love, more life. And then breathe in and out the moment that you're grateful for so that it can fill you once more. And slowly open your eyes. Come back bringing that experience. And, if it feels good, give you a couple minutes just to share with the person next to you. What is your experience that you had during this, looking at your day? And if it doesn't feel comfortable to share with the person next to you, that's fine too. We'll just take 2 minutes. Go ahead, find a person that wants to share. What's the experience you had with those two questions today?
take another minute and then we'll continue. Okay. For those of you who came a little late, what we've been dealing with are two questions that we have found really helpful in a daily life review. First question is, what are we most grateful for that day? And the second one is, what are we least grateful for during that day? And what we want to do in these next few moments is relate those two questions to finding the purpose of our lives. And to do that, I'd like to share one story with you. A number of years ago, we were giving a workshop to both Hispanics and Anglos. And the kind of workshop that we were giving, music is a really an important factor in it. It's a particular kind of healing workshop that we do. And in the morning, the Anglos played the music, and it really dragged. And in the afternoon, the Hispanics played the music, and it was wonderful, and a lot of healing happened with the people. So when we did our experience together that evening of what we call the daily life review, everyone had the same thing that they were not grateful for, right? Which would be the Anglos and their music. And everyone had the same thing of what they were most grateful for, which was the Hispanic people's music. Now, on the one hand, you might say, well, big deal. What does that have to do with the purpose of your life? What's important in doing the daily life review is that you often find a pattern. And the pattern that we had noticed in doing this daily life review was how often our moments of gratitude had to do with Hispanic or Latino or Spanish-speaking people. And there is a general rule in the life review that is really important, and that is, whenever possible, do more of what makes you grateful. And since we had experienced so many moments of gratitude from Latino and Hispanic people, we decided that we would go to Latin America and that we would study Spanish and work among those people. And we did that for about 3 years. And after those 3 years, I understood for myself why it was so important for me. I have always known that my healing, my growth, is dependent on dancing. By that I mean being able to express on the outside what's on the inside. And there are many ways to do that. And here's what I discovered. I discovered that Latino and Hispanic people are always dancing. That's how they appear to me. That what's on the inside is on the outside. And now I know that I needed to go to Latin America for those 3 years to get more in touch with the purpose of my life, which is to be able to express what's on the inside on the outside. But here's the deal. You don't have to figure out what the purpose of your life is. What is helpful is to get in touch with what you're most grateful for every day and to do more of it whenever you can. And if you do that, you will probably be taking the next step in experiencing the purpose of your life. I really want to emphasize the 2 questions are so simple. What are you most grateful for today? What are you least grateful for today? And whenever you can, whenever possible, do more of whatever you're most grateful for. So we'd like to close by a 3-minute process to help you to get more of a clue or an inkling of what the purpose of your life is. So we always start out the same. Take some deep breaths. The bottom of your toes, up through your legs, your abdominal muscles. Breathing in and out through your heart. When you get up to your heart, feel what it likes to have that light go in and out through your heart. When you breathe out, make all the space around you sacred. Fill it with that light. And just take a moment now to recall the moment from today for which you are most grateful. And the second question is very simple. Is there a pattern that keeps repeating itself in your life? That's part, you see that pattern in that moment that you're most grateful for. Is there something in that moment that you experience as a pattern that you're often grateful for that? Something that day after day or that often seems to fill yourself with gratitude. And last of all, is there something in that moment that you're grateful for or in that pattern that gives you a clue as to what might be the purpose or part of the purpose of your life?
Take another minute, and then we'll go on. Okay, when you're ready, gradually, gently open your eyes and come back. And we'll finish. This process of the examen, as we used to call it, the daily life review, is the single thing that we teach the most anywhere we go. And we teach it to groups of individuals, to families, to couples, because we find it is so effective and really powerful in helping guide our lives, even before we knew about the near-death experience. I especially encourage it with children. Those of you who have children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews, children that you care about, if you teach children. What? Yes, children can teach other. Yes, that's right. Is John, are you still here? John? I saw him come in, and I can't, the light is bright over there. I think he must have gone back out to take care of our dog. That's our son. We've done this with John since he was 2. And our language was always our favorite thing, our most favorite thing, and our least favorite thing. And we actually still use that, even though he's starting college in about 3 weeks. But, you know, when John was little, he was with us all the time. And I could control everything he did. I can't do that now. Now he is subject to many forces in the outer world. And the most important question, I think, for him is, what will really make me happy in a way that will last? He has to decide that every day, and there are all sorts of things coming at him, saying, me, 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 this phone, these shoes, this trip, this super duper candy bar. And my hope is that because we've been doing this all his life, he's been practicing over and over what really makes me happy. What makes me happy in a way that lasts? From one day to the next, from 1 year to the next. That's what this process can do for children, I believe. It's practice in recognizing happiness that lasts, real happiness. So I encourage you to do this with children, and I want to close with, our book about this is called Sleeping with Bread, and I want to close with a story of how we got that title. During the bombing raids of World War II, thousands of children were orphaned and left to starve. The fortunate ones were rescued and placed in refugee camps where they received food and good care. But many of these children who had lost so much could not sleep at night. They feared waking up to find themselves once again homeless and without food. Nothing seemed to reassure them. Finally, someone hit upon the idea of giving each child a piece of bread to hold at bedtime. Holding their bread, these children could finally sleep in peace. All through the night, the bread reminded them Today I ate, and I will eat again tomorrow. That's what it does for us, to store memories of kindness, of goodness in our hearts. What Richard did for me in 6th grade is a piece of bread that I take with me to bed every night, and it will never leave me. So, thank you for coming. I think we have, you say 5 minutes, this says 3 minutes. Can we do one question? And then we could take more after we close. Does anybody have a question or a comment? Do you want to add something, Denny? No? Yes. Oh, okay. I will. Yes. Yeah, okay.
I just have a comment to make. Can you hear this?
Yeah.
I just have a comment to make that was so simple and so incredibly powerful. I'm just amazed, and I appreciate your work so much.
Thank you, Rose.
Thank you.
She just did what we're talking about. The moment you're most grateful for.
Thank you.
Thank you. That means a lot to us, or to any person who would receive that. Thank you.
Thank you. What do you think? Should we quit? Okay. The book that Ken Ring helped us with so much is The Gifts of Near-Death Experiences. You don't have to die to experience your true home. And it's in the bookstore. Thank you all for coming.
Let's all give them lands. Yeah.